Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of AHR. I'm sure day 1 for some of you who showed up today for the first day. Welcome. We're here to talk about the driving forces of change for smart buildings. And I'm lucky to be joined by 3 very experienced people in the industry. And just to kind of kick things off a little bit, I think we all understand and agree that there's a lot of challenges in the smart building space. And if I look back to when I first got into the space in the 90s, we're doing things relatively the same way in buildings as we are then and today. There's a lot of reasons behind that. There's some procurement challenges. There's some slow adoption. There's a lot of labor strain in the workforce as well. So we're going to talk today about some of the things that we're doing to actually push things forward. And this is certainly something that not one company or one person can do by themselves. So this is something that's going to require a lot of tight collaboration and really coordination and really the understanding that not one solution is going to move this industry forward. It's going to take a family of solutions working together and cooperating to move our industry forward. So with that, I'd like to invite my panelists to make a quick introduction, and I'd like them to answer one question just to kind of kick things off. So that question is, what problem are you solving in the industry today, and how are you solving that? So we will start with Richard, and go right down the line.
Yeah, thanks, David. Good morning, everyone, and thanks to Automated Buildings for hosting these sessions again. My name is Richard McElhinney. I'm the Vice President of Technology at Conservative, based in Melbourne, Australia. In my day job, I do a lot of work in chiller plant optimization, and we specialise in that space. In my evening and nighttime job, I'm the Executive Director of Project Haystack, and I spend a lot of time working in that space in the data modelling and semantic modelling and ontologies. To your question, what are we trying to solve? Well, that's pretty easy. And I don't know if my good friend Mark Peacock's here, but it's, I'll quote him anyway, and it's all about the data. And that doesn't matter if you're in the C-suite all the way down to the field technician. Today it's all about the data. The Project Haystack is about driving methodologies and technologies and techniques to help organise data at scale, en masse, to drive benefits throughout the industry. So in a nutshell, that's what we're doing in Project Haystack. We're organising data, helping the industry do that as fast and as accurately as they can.
All right, Richard, thank you. Brian?
Yeah, thanks. Brian Turner, CEO of Buildings IoT. Based in North America primarily, but we also have offices in the UK. I'd say the biggest thing that we're trying to tackle is still trying to get rid of data silos. They're everywhere. And they've been there since Logworks, BACnet. Just every time we think that we've made some change and made a difference, somebody figures out how to go right back into the silos. And so we're trying to solve that problem with the actual data layer. So it's not just about the semantic modeling, which is absolutely crucial, and the fact that we have 5 or 6 or 10 different modeling standards is also a problem. So we're trying to really get that consistency of data layer such that applications now can use the same data, the same source of truth for all the different things. Give owners real choice at the application layer. There's a lot of innovation going right now at the application layer, and if you have to reintegrate every single time you want to change, then it's just a cost prohibitor. So we're really trying to enable and launch that type of thing for the whole industry, and really focused on the FM space. I know a lot of data layers are trying to be everything to everybody. We just want to focus specifically on energy efficiency in the FM space.
That's great, Brian, thank you. And Lenny?
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, good morning, everyone. I'm with Bidtracer, and I like to ask people, when we look at that chart there and say, driving forces change for smaller buildings. What actually makes a smaller building? What really makes a smaller building? Anyone have a guess at all? People make a smaller building, right? That's what it starts with. And what we do in Bidtracer is there are people that build buildings today, contractors, system integrators, consulting engineers, and if we make them smarter, if we make them more efficient, they can go ahead and apply their smarts into doing something that's much more valuable for buildings. So that's how Bidtracer contributes to it. So what we are is we are a full-blown sales and operations tool for contractors and system integrators. And I like to tell folks that, we have more contractors and sales force using Bidtracer than all the combined sales force of multiple multinational companies out there. And what do? We converted Excel spreadsheets into a cloud-based system that connects to multiple manufacturers. So that's basically what it is. So at the end of the day, if we enable different people in the industry to be able to operate much more efficiently, including what we talked about, if we get the ontology right, we get the data sets correct, we decide to break down those silos, we can make those smaller bullets, right? So.
Great. I like that you said people. That resonates with me a lot, and it reminds me of a quote I heard last year. Somebody said, buildings don't use energy. They don't use resources. It's the people that are in that building that need to be there for running the business or whatever other purposes they're there. They're the ones that are consuming the energy. That's right. We have to think about it in terms of people. And it's a good mindset change. So yeah, I like that you said that. And I know I didn't introduce myself. I'll do that now. My name is Sciarrino. I'm VP of Sales at KTERIO. And we're a building operating system. And I think what Lenny said about people resonates with me is a lot of what we do is not focusing on the technology itself, but trying to solve problems for people. Because at the end of the day, all the technology in the world that isn't used properly or that's misapplied isn't really doing anybody any good. So we start with the people and then build from there and try to find out what technologies are applicable to their day-to-day life. So with that said, I think this is going to be a great discussion. I want to kick it off with a question that really centers on people. So we all know we have a workforce challenge. It's been going on for quite a while. There's a shortage of skilled labor. There's a shortage of even people that are willing to get into the trades today to get educated to do this kind of work. We've got some great programs out there that are encouraging development in those areas like Stacks and Jewels. For those of you that aren't aware of them, look them up. They're doing some great work in the New York City metro area. But Richard, I'll start with you. From a labor standpoint, what sort of things do you see from a technology standpoint that can help bridge that gap?
Yeah, well, my mission here is to talk about organizing data, so I'm going to pivot straight to that. I think that with the skills shortage that we all recognize and we all talk about, the ability to work with data at scale in an efficient and fast manner is one of the key areas that we need to address as an industry. One of the things that I look at is that a lot of the energy efficiency and the decarbonisation programs that we talked about in the previous discussion, they've been focusing on working with one building at a time. And we don't have the labour skills, we don't have the people to go around and do that one building at a time. We need to be able to decarbonise our building stock quickly and at scale. And so by providing tools and technologies that can help organise the data to do that, to feed into programs like our previous panelists were talking about, then we have the ability to address that labour shortage. Now, yes, there's a whole new set of skills that are required to work with data and to deal with some of the technologies that Project Haystack brings out, some of Brian's technologies and Lenny's, of course. But there are a lot of the new graduates coming out of university, they know how to work with data. Data science courses are some of the most popular courses that are being taken at universities today. So we have a new set of skills coming into the industry. We need to recognise that the new skills are working with data. And if we can use those people and leverage those people and provide them with everything that our three organisations provide and a whole host of other organisations, we can actually start to address the skills shortage from a different perspective, rather than just the boots on the ground. We still need the boots on the ground, we still need the technicians in the building, but we have a whole new set of skills that we could possibly leverage into our industry.
Great. I think there's even an expectation from new graduates that they're not going to go into the workplace and start working with a Windows 98 based solution. I mean, they didn't see any of that when they were in school, but we know there's a lot of it out there. And I think putting that in front of them may be very disheartening on their first day of the job. So the more we can advance things to meet the expectations of the future, I think the bigger bang for the buck we get with the next generation. Brian, what's your take on the labor situation?
I think it's funny you say Windows 98, most of our incoming employees were born after that. So I think that, we say often meet people where they are. And so that's I think the foundation of it all. Because if you do have a new graduate or even intern, as we deal with a lot, or even somebody who's got a few years of experience, they are not going to take a job that's going to do a Mac. I know Leon's never seen one. I can show you one anytime you want to see one. I'm sure there's 1,000 here, right, in Chicago. But it is amazing to think about what the young generation, let's just say 30 and younger, expect the way they expect to interact with the building. They just assume that it's like everything else they interact with. And when they show up in a building and they're like, you want me to use what? We're talking to a very large enterprise right now, and they literally record all of their cold storage temps every hour manually, and they stick in a folder, like a physical folder, not in a computer, in a folder, and then that goes in a file cabinet. That is still happening today. So obviously, it's very basic. There's nothing smart building-ish to solve that, but that is still the way people are operating. So you got to meet them where they are. We still have people doing those things. And so we have to provide them a solution that doesn't overwhelm them, right? And at the same time, we have people that are coming in that are expecting full automation control at their mobile device, right? So we have to meet them there as well. So you have to really understand and build your stack, your technology stack, whatever you're choosing, whichever vendors you're choosing to work with, to actually solve for all of those things as your organization sees. So it's a big people problem because every single customer we interact with has a different problem with related to people. And it could be a shortage, it could be, hey, our people are expecting a certain level of technology that we don't have, or it could be our people don't even use technology. And we need to kind of limp them in and bring them up to speed slowly, at their speed. So that's why we just say, meet people where they are.
Yeah, and I like that. You have to take bites at a time. People are in different places. Right? And I've had similar experience as you. You've got people manually logging things, and you've got people that are using AI and ML right now, and they can both be in the higher education world doing things completely different. So, great, Lenny.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting when we think about our industry and how far we've come from the technology standpoint, right? So, Dave, I think we started about the same time in the industry in the 90s with pneumatics. Since then, it's gone from pneumatics to DDC, and just about the time most of the manufacturers out here are trying and putting out IP controllers out there and celebrating having IP controllers. People are already saying, oh, we should be in the cloud-based system. And meanwhile, everybody else is cloud native, right? And it's moving so fast, right? And well, we've got an industry that it's not very attractive to come work in the HVAC industry for most people. They want to go work in the financial sectors. They want to go work in all the cooler sectors, right? And part of the reason is because they are not able to gain the knowledge they need to get and all that historical knowledge about controls and how it works very quickly. I know we've got SBA, we've got a few other organizations, just on Stacks and Jules, that are training folks and everything else, but it still takes a lot of time. And we've got to think about it from the perspective of, okay, what is this generation, what are they used to? I mean, I know that most of them in the generation has an attention span of TikTok 1.23 seconds, right? 1 minute, 23 seconds. Mine is slightly longer. So perhaps there's an opportunity out there, and I talk about opportunities that come out of these sessions, that you could look at it. I go on LinkedIn today, and you've got lots of people posting things on there saying, hey, check out what I did with this chiller, look at how I can do this, how I can do that. Perhaps there's an opportunity to build out a platform that mines through using ChatGPT some of these videos that ends up becoming a training school for people that want to do something with the chiller, or something with the controller. So there are opportunities to be had, and what we need to do is we need to embrace the technology that we have around us to make it better. So I think that is, once we take that mindset, I think there are creators amongst us here that will come up with those things that will make it faster, and they will get caught up faster, right?
Yeah, I mean, I could not agree more. I think we have to solve the problem with technology because we don't have the people willing to go do those jobs to solve it for us with headcount. So we look at what Brian said, meeting people in the middle. We also have a huge culture change. We've got people that are stuck in the world 25, 30 years ago, and we've got people that have expectations that we probably aren't even there yet from a technology standpoint. And we have to bring those teams together to find some middle ground to be able to actually move this industry forward. So, and my next question I'm really looking forward to, because this I think really is and has been one of the big drivers in moving the technology forward. And I'm really glad that Richard's here because he brings a perspective from outside the U.S. where I think we've seen some drivers in Australia do that. So my question is specifically around regulations and regulatory requirements that have been put in place in certain geographies, countries, and cities in the U.S. that are actually working and driving people to change behavior and adopt new technology because there's actually some teeth involved, or at least some competition. So, love to start with you, Richard, your take on how the regulations are impacting.
Just posted a video of Leon talking from about half an hour ago. He covered a lot of that. But look, Australia has led the way from a regulatory standpoint in driving change through the industry in terms of smart buildings and adoption of technology and trying to drive down carbon emissions and go down the whole decarbonisation program. So that has worked, and there's, the evidence was discussed before, and we can point to the numbers over 10, 15, 20 years of that working. But it's not just Australia, and you mentioned a number of other like areas, but one of the things I know from the work I'm doing as well is Europe is also driving a lot of this stuff. The EU is actually mandating what they're calling the European Building Performance Directive. It's a standard, and basically they're going to mandate that every building needs to have some sort of automation and control system. In Europe, I mean, we can debate the percentages, but they're estimating around 70% of the building stock in Europe does not have an automation system. And so those regulatory changes are going to drive the change to the industry in Europe, and a very similar, as you said, similar regulations coming here. But it's going to be driving a lot of change to help us adopt technologies into this space that will allow us to follow the decarbonisation programs to reduce our emissions in our buildings. And so, yeah, regulatory programs work. And it's not just Australia, so it's all other parts of the world that are trying to use these programs.
We saw Local Law 97 in New York come about several years ago, and it ended up not really having teeth, and they revised it, and they gave it some teeth. And that's when we really started seeing it be effective. Have you seen that similar?
Yeah, absolutely.
Did they start with something that had actual consequences for lack of adoption?
So the teeth part of it, as you put it, did come a few years after, and as Leon pointed out, it was the federal government was driving that change by mandating what their requirements were from a tenancy perspective. I think one of the other things that helped drive the change as well in Australia was that buildings over a certain size were required by law to display their emissions rating. So I think it was 2,000 square meters and above. You had to have a plaque on the outside of your building saying, our building is rated at 4.5 stars or 3.7 stars. So it was publicly there. As you walk down the street, you can see a lot of the buildings actually have that rating published there. And so, no one wanted to have a bad rating and put it on a plaque on the outside of the building. So that was, having those sorts of, mechanisms that almost shamed people into wanting to drive it.
Nothing wrong with that.
It worked. It shamed people, and there's, those of us in Australia who worked in this industry, we've made some money, haven't we, Leon, out of doing this, and we're not afraid to be proud of being part of that change.
Brian, where do you see the regulatory piece fitting in for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think in that long-winded answer Richard just gave you, he finally hit on something that resonated with me when I was talking, and I talk about it often. It's the peer pressure. You can call it social shaming, whatever you want, but it's the peer pressure that happened in Australia that caused the exponential rise of adoption of technologies to decarbonize, or at that time, just be energy efficient, right? Here, I don't see that. I've attended lots and lots of different conferences, and I've seen lots of conversations about reporting. I love the conversation, the example earlier about a tenant said, if you don't have a plan, we're not moving in. Well, you don't have a plan, I'll make a plan, no problem. Do I have to execute on that plan? That's the question. And the difference between what Australia did and what we're doing right now is they forced an execution of the plan, not just having a plan. I think that's where we are right now. I would love to say that in the next 10 years we will have the same kind of results that Australia did. But I think the other thing that Leon brought up is that Australia's building stock is less than the stock in New York City. So I think, from an overall size perspective, it was probably easier, and with less technology back then than we have today, it was probably a simpler method. So it took off and the shaming worked. Here, I don't know that that's going to work. I am interested in New York to see now that the fines are actually starting to be levied on these building owners. I'm interested to see if action happens. Because I haven't really, even in New York, we haven't seen the kind of mass adoption. We're certainly seeing enterprises, big globals, are certainly taking action. Those required to report are reporting, and some of them are taking action. I want to get to that 70% here in the US that don't have controls. What are they doing? Or if you're not publicly traded, you're not required to report. So what are they doing, right? So there's so much work to do still. And I would say I haven't seen a noticeable impact on our business due to regulation. We've certainly talked a lot about it. I've been at conferences where we're speaking a lot about it. A lot of my customers have plans. A lot of my customers want to know if there's things we can do to affect it. But we probably would have been doing those anyway, under the guise of energy efficiency and cost savings. So I'm not sure that there's really been the uptick because of decarbonization or ESG or regulation, but it's coming. I do believe it's coming.
Yeah, I think like everything else in this industry, it moves extremely slow, and it's like trying to turn a cruise ship with a toothpick in the water. Yeah, it's frustrating sometimes. Lenny, where do you stand on this?
No, you're absolutely right. It's exactly the way you described it, trying to steer a ship with a toothpick, particularly in North America, right? So we've had a lot of success outside North America, in Latin America, and Europe, in driving some of the initiatives that I have. But I can tell you, it's also a call to action, because one of the things that makes the United States great is the standards that we have, right? So we've got ASHRAE standards, we've got some of these things that have been established over the years, and it should be a call to action to many of the folks that are in this room, as well as others that might end up watching this later on. We need more young people to show up at the ASHRAE committee meetings, right? We need you guys there to help drive that change. Because unless that happens, it's not going to happen. And I don't know how many of you guys already know that just prior, there's a winter conference that happens for ASHRAE, which happens prior to this, which happens on Friday, started Thursday last week. There's a summer conference that happens as well. And that is where you can really change the standards and make an influence. And I think it's very important that that influence is implemented at that level, particularly for North America. And will make it slightly easier to navigate. And at the same time, we can also get the input from folks that have not been in the industry, that are with the technology that is expected, right, to come in and make a change, right? So,
great point. If you want to drive the change, get on an ASHRAE committee for sure. We're going to one more question, then we're going to get questions from the audience. So, last question I have for the panelists is, what advice can you give either a building owner or maybe a system integrator who you work with, who is trying to go down this journey either with their own portfolio or their building or with their clients from a service standpoint? What advice can you give them to actually move the needle and not just do what we've been doing for the past 20 years? Richard, start with you.
I'm not sure I should be giving advice to building owners at all, to be honest, but look, I think the observation I would share with property owners and building owners is that, from my observation, the most successful programs around reducing emissions, decarbonisation, are executed when you have a partnership with your suppliers, a long-term partnership. If you're just going to go out to a tender or every building is going to be different, and you're going to have a different supplier in every building, it's going to be a bit of a mess. So the most successful programs are one where you start a journey with a supplier, and you go through that journey working together in a partnership, not holding it over them that they might lose the job, but looking for that long-term strategic arrangement with them that says, look, we will go on this journey with you. And there's going to be a bit of give and take between the supplier and the building owner for sure. But I think if you can work together over a long period of time, you can start to have that success. So I would say find a partner you'd like to work with, find one that's qualified, and build that strategic long-term partnership with them to deliver through, particularly if you've got a portfolio of buildings you need to work on.
So you should be giving advice to building owners. That was great. So I mean, one thing that I really like is, the the term partnership because what I see all the time is we're going to put an RFP out for this. You know, and I've never seen an RFP come back with the solution that they actually wanted, because most of the time the RFP wasn't written well, there wasn't discussion, it was very closed down, and everybody checks the box to say they can do this, and then they figure out, well, we'll figure out how to do it if we get awarded. That's not the way we move this forward. It's a recipe for disaster.
I think, you know, the building owners and the vendors and suppliers, as they go through that journey, they're both learning about what they need and how they want it to deliver, how the different use cases will apply to them. So there's learnings taken on both sides of the fence there, and I think that's also the important part, is to take those learnings and reapply them as you go on this journey.
Yep, agreed. Brian, how do you feel about this?
So, agree with what Richard said, and something you even said, David. I think that my advice to technology providers, solution providers, is they better figure out how to check their ego and partner, because if we really want owners to be able to go on a journey that's going to be 10, 15, 20 years, they need to have trust that they have an ecosystem of suppliers that are working together. So I think that the most successful implementations so far have had that characteristic. But my advice to owners is just one word: it's stamina. This is hard. You know, you can connect a building that was perfect, it came in, everything, onboarding was fast. Get to the next building, onboarding takes 8 months. You know, you have to have stamina. You have to understand your vision, understand that work is hard, and understand that doing the hard work is actually the most rewarding. So it's that, and a lot of people want the easy button, and it just doesn't exist in this world. I mean, we have every building is a unicorn, because every building at engineering firm, I don't know any engineering firm that has built the exact or designed the exact same building 2 times in a row. They're like, no, we're going to improve. We're going to do something better. We're going to try this new technology. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. What's the impact on controls? Who cares? It's going to be super efficient, right? So since we do that, we have to have stamina. If you're a building owner, you got to understand that your building stock is not cookie cutter. And because of that, because it's not the same design engineer, probably not the same control system for HVAC, probably not the same lighting control system, probably not the same electrical distribution layout, probably not the same of anything. And so when you understand that, you understand that you gotta have stamina, you gotta keep going, don't get frustrated. It's gonna be frustrating. Accept it, understand it, and do the hard work.
Setting the expectation really up front too. I see a lot of people that just pretend that it's easy because they want people to say yes, and I think you have to have that buy-in and know that no, it won't be easy, but we're here to get you through it.
Right.
Lenny?
Yep, can't add much more than, you need to have a strategic vision. You want to get to this point here, and this is what we got. We're here, and you got to take in bite-sized chunks, right? Pick the right players, pick the right partners, bite-sized chunks. And with every success, you move on to the next step, right? So you do have both, but you cannot just think that you're going to boil the ocean. You got to eat one piece at a time.
And what do we say? Success never comes in a straight line.
That's right, yeah. Because you're going to have to pivot along the way, change direction, as things evolve, right? So.
Yeah, followed by a series of failures. Sounds right. Spectacular.
That's right.
Always ones we learn from. So, appreciate everybody's time. I'd like to open it up to the audience for questions. I saw a few hands already, so yes, sir.
Thank you. I just came to another session on Build and Smart. But 20 years ago, we started with Green, and now we're up to LEED version 4, or Green Globes. Then we had the pandemic, and we did well and fit well. We at the Automated Building Association did something 10 years ago on smarter buildings and building intelligence quotient. So my question is, do we get something? Australia has a smart building association. Paris has a smart building association. How do we bring this together, whether it's Smart Score or Spire or our VIQ? Because it will be a long journey, but that's what we did with the energy quotient from ASHRAE and with LEED. So having a set of standards or programs that people aspire to will maybe drive that business to invest in these technologies.
Yeah, I agree. I spent time to get my LEED certification thinking that this was going to be the driving force of the industry, and for a few years it was common, and now we don't really hear about it anymore. And you see LEED Platinum buildings that are wasting just as much energy as a building that had no energy efficiency considerations at all. And I think it's a little bit like the ontology discussion of building data. Brian is involved in that as well. There's 6 or 7 competing ontologies of how do we describe building data. And somebody says, well, I need to solve this problem. There's 6 of them. And their solution is to add a 7. I think we keep seeing this in the standards arena as well. As we think there's a better way to skin the cat. And now instead of 10 standards, we have 12. So how to solve that? I don't know. Maybe our panelists can chime in on that. Who wants to take that?
I can take a stab at it. I think of it this way, right? Just like I talked about, this is the end point. So we've got to have a North Star, right? And the North Star might move along the way. And some things get adopted, some things get implemented, right? So I know right now, when it comes to carbon emissions and carbon trading, credits and stuff like that, you've got certain organizations like, I think it's GRI, the Global Resource, I think it's GRI, I don't know what it stands for, but GRI they have their standards. And it kind of makes sense. So we are adopting that, we're using some of that. And along the way, we might find out that it doesn't fit the scope entirely, and somebody else might come up with a standard. So we've got to figure out what that North Star is and adopt things along the way. And part of it, and I go back to the whole ASHRAE thing. ASHRAE is a standard that was developed a long time ago, and it's an organization, and we should also strive to drive some of the conversations around there, because I don't think there is an ASHRAE standard on how you're going to measure carbon emissions today. It should be something that should exist. It should be folks in this room, somebody in this room should go join ASHRAE. I can introduce you to whoever needs to be there, and let's set up a committee, let's have that discussion, and we've got to create it, right? So that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I don't like that plan.
Yeah.
I think the carbon emission standards are there. I think ASHRAE should support them.
Yeah, that's
Not
big.
make new ones.
Yeah, let's make them do it, right?
But from a technology provider perspective, I think that we have to be open to understand that Australia developed their standard, the UK developed theirs, the European Union developed theirs. We have seen neighbors coming into the UK, which is fantastic, but they still make us display it alongside the one they already use. We have a different one in the US. From a technology perspective, we just have to be open to use them all, because most of them use the same data, they just calculate it a little bit differently, right? Whether it's a 5-star score or 4-star score, or just a number, 0 to 100. So from our perspective, that's the way they want to report it. It's fairly easy, right, from our perspective. But from their perspective, the reason they're using these standards is because it's part of what's driving their business forward. And we can't expect that everything is just going to change. Like, go to Australia, who's been doing it the longest, and say, hey, Energy Star's really bad. We're the US, you guys should really use Energy Star. Or, why would they? They've got a whole lot of investment there, just like we have a whole lot of investment in Energy Star. I think from a technology perspective, this isn't that hard for us to normalize that stuff and bring it together and let the client operate their business as what drives their business and has been. I think eventually this stuff all does merge together. Naturally.
North Star.
Right. So I don't think we have to force it. I think it will get there. I think the regulations that hopefully are going to have some real teeth and actually start to take action, I think that will also drive it. Because regulations will have some sort of measurement and verification towards it. And then the problem with LEED, as you know, David, I did the same thing, wasted a good part of my life getting certified. Had nothing to do with operations, and it was the most disappointing revelation when I was in LEED to realize that it had nothing to do with operating a building.
Even the lead operations and management.
Right.
Nothing to do with operations. Right?
So I'm excited to see things that are actually coming out and trying to be regulatory around operating. And I think that's a really key factor.
Yeah. Sounds like we need more toothpicks in the water too.
Still, that should be good.
Right, so what other questions do we have back here?
Do you think the New York local law 97 have any teeth?
The question was, do we think that local law 97 really has teeth?
Yeah, I think it does. Absolutely. The problem is it's just now starting to. I think when it first was initiated, it was a good idea. Like, hey, maybe we can all do this together and kumbaya. But we know that businesses don't make decisions based on feel good. They make decisions based on financial gain or financial loss. And so I think the escalations of fines that will happen, I think we'll start seeing that later this decade. I think in the first part, just like we see with credits, people will pay the fine. I mean, it's easy to pay the fine. And so until those fines are escalating, like Local 97 has been written, I don't think people will make decisions to spend capital today to avoid a fine. When the fine is bigger than the capital outlay, then I think you'll start seeing the teeth actually come into play.
I think some of these fines, they're phased in, but so are the requirements for energy savings. That gets more and more stringent every year. So it causes that continuous improvement. So at some point it will catch up if you're not doing the work. Another question?
I was curious about, so from a college campus retro commissioning standpoint, we see more and more complicated buildings. I mean, we're getting smarter, but more complicated. And more things are slipping through the commissioning process. How do we make controls that are the last thing to go in before students arrive May 20th? How do we make controls smarter and simpler?
Well, I think it goes back to the discussion around the people. You know, I don't think we should be making the control smart. I think we need to be making the people who are specifying, installing, commissioning, making them smarter and helping them do their jobs better right from the get-go. I mean, if you just take a wander down onto the automation showcase on the floor, you'll see a lot of great controls, a lot of really smart pieces of hardware, a lot of great cloud systems and programming tools and everything you could possibly want. So we have it all there, the technology's there. I don't think the technology needs to be smarter. I think we need to be helping our people do a better job of commissioning systems. I think we need to be educating the specifying engineers, the consulting engineers, so they know what to look for, they know what to specify, they know what to pick up on when they're going through the commissioning. I think we need to educate building owners as well, so their expectations are met. So then when they go to tender and they look for a system, they're not going to be disappointed at the other side. And everyone through that value chain, I don't want to say can be held accountable, but they know what's going to happen at each of those points and they start to get it right. So I think it's about the people, going back to what we were talking about at the start.
Yeah, where we've seen positivity or better turnover success is really in data centers. So the data centers build their communication networks out very early, right? They get their control systems in there very early. They do multiple steps of commissioning. But the key thing is that the software, the analytics layer, is actually in there very early. So we're using analytics in those applications to help commission. So when you talk about helping the people, it's not just about, well, hire smarter people. Well, no shit, we'll all do that. But it's about using the tools and technology we have today earlier in the process so that you can achieve that turnover date. Because too often we see turnover date happens, controls are not commissioned. Even if on paper they've been commissioned, they're not working. You haven't had a shoulder season, you haven't had a summer yet, or you haven't had a winter yet. You don't know what it's going to be. And so I think a lot of people know that in the back of their head, but they don't let that inform their decision making. And so we have these hard cutoff dates, like nobody's getting paid if this isn't working, and then everybody gets there, and then all the contractor wants to do is just get through warranty, just hope that the shoulder season works, and hope we don't have too many hot calls in the summer, et cetera, and then get to warranty, and then we can charge you to come and fix your system. Or you'll have a new vendor that will come and fix or reprogram our whole system. So I think systematically, we have to improve. We have to understand what these issues are. It's not new to any of us, but we never take the steps to make it better. We just go, this doesn't work, let's do it again, let's start over. And to me, there are strategies. You don't have to do the full data center, 5 levels of commissioning, but you could do 3. You could start looking at these systems before, 5 weeks before turnover, and saying, are we really going to hit this date? And everybody's just like, yeah, we have to. Well, sometimes it's just too late, and I think it's a process problem in my view more than a technology problem.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is a process problem. It is actually with the construction manager. It's a project management issue that you're looking at, because what tends to happen is the end date for both the electricals to be done and the mechanicals to be done is like 2 days before sealable. And how you expect anyone to commission a building at that point in time is, So it is actually a project management issue with the construction manager, and it's getting them to the table and letting them understand what it takes to commission a building and setting the deadlines and milestones accordingly. So,
I think there's a lot of things broken in the construction world today, because they're the same way we've done 20 years ago, and the pressures at the end of a project, and it's always the controls, right, at the end, right? It's the control stuff, right? there's always corners cut, there's exceptions made to accept something that it works, but maybe doesn't work when it should be. And that's okay, because the job will get completed. And that's really what happens, and despite all the commissioning and the well-intentions of everybody putting that system in, like Brian said, you get to a point where something's not going to work. So to assume that your commissioning is airtight is a big assumption. And my answer to that is take control of the commissioning, partner with somebody that can continuously commission your systems till the end of time. Figure out how to make them better, get them there, and then watch them. And if somebody does something that creates a problem, you know about it immediately and you can take action. And eventually your staff is then trained to operate that building at its peak performance. So we're about out of time. I think we have time for one more question. Back in the corner, your hand went up first.
You mentioned that all development at times are painful, every building needs a cost. Obviously, residential is much tougher nut to crack, but in terms of human health and environmental impact, it's not something that we can afford to leave behind. So just wondering if there were any smart control solutions that were on your radar that apply to residential.
Okay, so the question is about residential and the application of smart controls in the residential space. What's on our radar? So I'll let our panelists jump in here.
I think every time I hear the residential market, I run in the other direction. That's not something that I spend a lot of time in, but my observations are it's a very fragmented market, and there's a lot of proprietary technologies in that space, so it makes it, it's a difficult one to work with, that's for sure. I don't have an answer directly to the question in terms of do I have something I've seen that I think is going to solve that problem? No, because I think there's a whole lot of vendors out there selling smart building technologies, or smart home technology, sorry, but they don't talk to each other. And I think the classic example of that is Google and Apple. I mean, they've got the Google Nest, and you've got the Apple ecosystem, and never the two shall meet, to talk and integrate. So I'm an Apple guy. I have an iPhone, I have a Mac, I have an iPad, so I'm in that ecosystem through and through. I'm limited now to those devices that just work with that technology. So I think it's a tough one to answer. It's a tough space. And because of all the proprietary technologies, it's going to be fragmented for quite some time. That's my observation.
So I'm a little more optimistic than that. I agree with everything you said, but I do think there's actually a way to address multifamily res. Metering is obviously the easy one, right? So depending on whether you've got 1 meter or every individual unit is metered, to actually understand where energy is being used, how it's being used, when it's being used, is really important. I also think that from a privacy perspective, these are homes, and so getting the ability to actually have control is tricky. There are some technology companies that are doing that today. But I think from a monitoring perspective, with wireless technology and wireless sensing, and the ability, if you really wanted to understand as a landlord or as a portfolio owner, what the indoor air quality or indoor health is in all of your spaces, you can do that passively with sensors. You don't have to be in their space, taking over their Nest instead of the Ecobee or whatever. You can actually do things that are proactive. And then if you do it right, you can also help that influence like predictive maintenance and that sort of thing. So you're not waiting for the person to actually get sick because there's mold. You can have sensors that are measuring the moisture or finding the leaks in the toilet or whatever might be helpful in that area. So I think right now it's I think multifamily actually has more regulation than we're seeing in commercial. And so there are solutions out there, but you definitely want to make sure that you have an ecosystem of partners, because there's not going to be one vendor that solves it all. It's definitely going to be a partnership. So that's what I was saying.
I agree.
Well, if there's any other questions, just feel free to come on up after we're done, but I'd like to give a big round of applause to our panelists.